Welcome friends of Ai4Autism, it's Shaheen here, and today we continue with our series of interviews where we hear from members of our community and listen to their stories. We have a lovely guest with us today. Nikki is a teaching assistant working, and hey Nikki, living and working in London. And Nikki is also a mother to an autistic son. And today we'll be hearing her story and we'll get a chance to learn from her experiences. Please welcome Nikki. Hey Nikki, how's it going?
I'm fine, how are you? Thanks.
Very well, thank you very much. Let's jump straight into it. Nikki, tell us about your son and how old he was when he was diagnosed as autistic.
I think he was statemented around about 8 years old.
8 years old.
But the school he was in, they was catering to him well. They was like dealing with him as if they would have, like he was statemented. So
yeah,
it was really good.
Well, that's really good to hear. I mean, and after discovering that he was autistic, how did you feel and how did you change as a person and as a mother?
Well, it was a bit of a relief to sort of get a diagnosis, to know that I wasn't going crazy and thinking, why is he so different? But it gave me a lot of how can I explain it? It made me a better mum, because then I was a lot more patient because I realised it wasn't his fault and I wasn't going crazy. So yeah, it made me a lot more patient once I knew what was going on with him.
Oh yeah. You mentioned right now about not going crazy and him being different. Can you describe some of the things that made him stand out or be different?
I mean, I wouldn't say he stood out because he's all I know. I don't know any different, but when it was compared to other children, he would just be in his own world, just in a bubble, playing in his own mind, you know, and it took him a little while to start speaking compared to other children. But luckily enough, when he did start going to school, he caught up with all of that. So I was quite lucky in that aspect.
Oh, wow. So when you say when he's playing with other kids and he was was he reserved or was he out there with them, but you could see that he was kind of in his own mind? What was it like when you observed him?
He just went off and did his own thing. He wasn't interested with other children. If they didn't want to play the way he wanted to play, he'd just go off, and more time he was by himself. So
amazing.
He enjoyed his own company a lot more.
Yeah. And how were family and friends towards you and your son after discovering he was autistic?
I mean, we'd all fought it for a little while because I'd started looking into it myself, but it was just, I didn't want to self-diagnose him, and you know, so, but when I got into CAMHS and they started explaining a lot to me, then that made it a lot easier for me to adjust to him, you know.
And when you say adjust to him, can you describe some of the challenging things that you faced while he was growing up over the past 8 years?
Well, yeah, he didn't do well in crowds, and he still doesn't, but he's a lot more vocal with it now. He can explain without getting upset and agitated. So, but when he was younger, loud noises would just set him off. And if we was under a tunnel and an ambulance went off and it bellows, oh, he would literally just break down, like, and it'd take me ages to console him as a child anyway, as a baby.
That's incredible.
But now he's a lot more socially aware. He's getting there. So that's a good thing.
Well, that's really positive to hear. I mean, and with your experience as a mother to an autistic child, what did you set out to do? And have you been speaking to people to raise awareness?
No, I mean, because I've actually got a few friends with autistic children.
Yeah.
And all different levels of autism. So it was nice to know that I weren't alone. But I did go to a lot of meetings at CAMHS in Greater X Street, near where I live, and they helped me a lot. They did, like helping me to adjust to how he might be thinking and how he might be feeling, and just ways of diffusing him having a meltdown, you know. So they were very helpful.
We're going to come to the meltdown question in a bit. What you said there was quite key, and it's something that I discovered with many of the parents of autistic children who we've spoken to, and even autistic people themselves, about being alone and then suddenly realizing that that's not the case and other parents are going through the very same thing. You've mentioned CAMHS. Can you tell us more about CAMHS, who they are, what they offer, and what your experience has been with them so far?
The Children and Adolescent Mental Health Team. And they're the ones who I think I was going there for about 2-3 months, once or twice a week, and I was just sitting there with I don't know if it's called a therapist or an educational psychologist, I'm not sure, and they'd just sit there and watch the way me and Tyler would interact together, and then just ask me questions and sort of like work me through how his mind might be seeing the world and things like that. So that helped me a lot, to be fair, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, it sounds like they provided really valuable information, a lot of help, which is great.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. And now you mentioned meltdowns, and I was going to ask, does Tyler have any sensory sensitivity issues?
I mean, even up till now, he does struggle in big crowds. If he's got the
Right.
option of going off by himself, he will take it and go and sitting in a room and just with his phone or his games or whatever, he would rather do that. But he doesn't like it when it isn't on his terms. If he's being forced into that situation, I mean, he's 14 now, so he wouldn't say he has a meltdown, but he will just get really difficult and just really, what is it? Just won't do as he's told, basically, until he gets his own way, you know?
Well, I was going to ask you, when you say really he can become difficult, what does that look like? And compared to what it looked like for, say, 5 years ago?
Oh, 5 years ago, he would literally, well, not 5 years. He's been getting better over the years, but he would just be very rude and very confrontational, very argumentative until you just tell him, "Oh, go away," and then that's what he wants. So, but when he was younger, he would just literally cry, scream, hold his ears, and yeah, he couldn't deal with it when he was younger.
Mm-hmm. And nowadays, as you said, he takes himself out of that situation and he maybe plays on his phone and does something to keep himself occupied.
Yeah, to keep himself occupied. But if he's being forced to be in a situation, he would just become very rude, but very belligerent and not nice to be around, and he will do it purposefully. So he knows what he's doing. Yeah.
Well, as you're probably aware, us as a team, we're raising awareness to build a tool to help people with sensory sensitivity issues, to identify triggers. And would you say a tool like this would have helped you and Tyler while he was growing up?
Oh yeah, definitely. While he was younger, because when they're young and they don't know how to vocalize and they just cry and scream and hit out, they can, everyone's different, but that's my experience from it. But luckily my son wasn't a violent child, so but I have seen it like with other children, unfortunately, but they can't seem to control it. I believe everyone deals with autism differently, but yeah, it is something that does help parents if they're like educated about triggers.
Well, that's really encouraging to hear. I mean, thank you very much for sharing what you have. Is there a message, Nikki, that you would like to send out to our audience about autism and what it's like to have a child on the spectrum?
I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, I wouldn't have him any other way because he's got his quirks and I love him for all that he is. But yeah, just because you can't see a disability doesn't mean it isn't there. And just to have a bit of patience with people, and that's it, just have patience for people with autism and it will be fine.
Yeah, patience, the key takeaway.
It's the key, and repetition.
Repetition.
And repetition.
Yeah, tell us more about that. Repetition. What do you mean by that?
Well, my son loves routine. I find routine is key because that gives them comfort and security, I think, yeah. Routine. And that's the key to learning as well with them, just repetition.
Wow. Well, you know what? I doubt this will be the last time we interview you. I mean, we'd love to have more about routine and repetition and your experience with Tyler. And how can our audience find out more about you? Are you on social media?
Yeah, but not like that, where I've got big followings, no.
No, that's absolutely fine, Nikki.
Yeah.
Well, Nikki, thank you very much for all your time, and thank you for everyone who's been listening today. If you like what you saw and you want to get your story out there, so do get in touch with us. So let's put your voice out there in the world. Thank you all. Thank you for supporting AI4Autism. And thank you once again, Nikki, and bye for now.
You're welcome. Bye.